Hello adventurers. My name is Crit and I post DnD memes, stories, and art. I'm just starting out, so if you want to be especially awesome, remember to like, subscribe and join the party. In addition to my DnD horror stories I also cover on the channel, I thought it would be fun to share some comedic or epic events from the Strixhaven homebrew campaign I run. I run a large campaign with 10 people, and half of them are brand new to DnD. The tone is pretty light for my setting, so chaos pretty much always ensues. For today's story, I'm going to start with how my lawful stupid paladin, Stan, started a grudge with a random frog on campus, only to discover I had more planned for that particular creature. Anyway, welcome to the session. First let me start out with some descriptions of some key characters. Stan is a dragonborn paladin who asked me if he could go lower than the point by minimums for intelligence. I routinely make Stan roll to see if he remembers how to do mundane things like opening doors. At the time of this saga, Stan had a whopping 6 intelligence, but a heart of gold and played by, ironically, one of the smartest people I have ever met IRL. Samuel is a tabaxi bard / rogue combo. Samuel served as sort of a hype man for Stan and serves as arguably the brains of the operation. Prone to thievery and instigation, Samuel always helps elevate things in my campaign. Quintelius is a character that exists within the Strixhaven module, and most DMs seem to play him as a snobby, over-the-top, dramatic Draco Malfoy. For my homebrew, he also serves as a sort of mafia don for all the less than legal activities on campus, so some of my more neutral players had space to RP and accomplish goals. With all that said, let's start this saga back in session 2. It was the second day all of my players had at Strixhaven, aka Magic School, aka Walmart Hogwarts. Since the campaign offers so many different clubs to join during your time there, I thought it would be a good idea to run a session as a club and job tabling fair similar to what you would have in an actual college. This served as a great opportunity to meet the abundance of NPCs within the school, and for people to find their niches early. Towards the end of the session, the party came across a group of students gambling on a race involving frogs. The party was greeted by Quintelius, who had just finished collecting the little extra money the previous students had on them as winnings for the previous race. The party chats up Quintelius, and he asks if anyone would like to participate by putting up 5 gold each. About half of the party agrees, and they are directed over to a tank containing a few dozen frogs. At the tank, I let players make a nature check to see if any of the frogs seem particularly well built. Unfortunately, out of my 5 players, only one succeeded on the roll because she successfully persuaded Quintelius to give her some tips in picking the good ones. Stan and Samuel both failed, picking sickly and lethargic-looking frogs. The players and Quintelius queued up at the starting line, and I let everyone roll for animal handling plus an additional modifier determined by how good of a frog they got. Right out of the gate, Quintelius's frog and the player with the success shot forward with a clear advantage. Samuel rolled low for his animal handling, and the already sick frog decided that its time was best served off the track and decided to veer 90 degrees and leave. Stan however got a nat 1 on his roll. Stan stood there, eye and eye with his frog, and yelled out encouragement and how this was the best frog and no other frog stood a chance. The frog responded by exploding. The frog's guts splattered all over Stan, who seemed less perturbed by the sudden and inexplicable death, and more upset that his chances of winning were now pretty much 0. Amidst the chaos, Quintelius's frog narrowly ends up winning the race, and he goes to collect his earnings from all of the players. All of them concede and mention that the race was fun or that fair's fair. But not Stan. When Quintelius met Stan, Stan demanded to know why Quintelius's frog was so special. Quintelius mentioned that he took good care of it and trained it, but that answer wasn't enough for him. Stan turned to Quintelius and yelled out, "What is his name, Quintelius?" as he pointed a finger toward the derpy-looking frog. "His smug aura mocks me." He continued. Out of character, I took a few seconds to think up some stupid name for this random frog, so I said his name was Charles. Stan proceeded to stare at the frog as if it was the one calling the shots. He snapped to Quintilius that he'd be nothing if it wasn't for Charles. Quintilius at this point can hardly process what this guy is even saying and calls him an idiot. Quintilius makes a gesture towards some of his boys, and the group is escorted away from the game. From that point on, Charles and Stan had an incomprehensible rivalry. Any time Stan and Quintilius would see each other on campus, the interaction would typically be an opening insult from Quintilius, usually oaf or dunce or something of that nature, followed by Stan asking about Charles in regards to his location or well-being. Quintilius would usually ignore these questions, or brush them off with a simple, "Charles is well." From that point in the usual flow, the conversation could have went any number of idiotic ways, with Stan always doing or saying something that warranted getting made fun of by Quintilius's boys. It seems important now to mention that Stan's god, ironically, Ogma, the god of knowledge. During these obviously troubling times, he prayed to his god for insight on how to obtain Charles. RPG as the god, I kept the advice vague, but told him to listen to Samuel as he would offer unique wisdom. The wisdom I wasn't counting on was Samuel convincing Stan they had to steal Charles and blackmail Quintilius. Months pass out of game, and we're now on like session 20. The group found a way into a local tavern they technically weren't permitted in. Inside of course was Quintilius, some frog racers, and several students being ripped off. Stan asks if he sees Charles. Nat 20 roll. As if on a dimly lit stage, a single light beam illuminates Charles in all of his glory sitting on a bar stool as if it was as important as any other humanoid in the room. Stan and Samuel immediately formulate a plan. Thankfully for them, however, the surrounding chaos made this check quite easy. Seemingly every player had some goal in mind coming to this tavern. Some stole gold off of a few of the frog racers, some were trying ineffectively to seduce the school's headmaster, and some failed their constitution checks with their alcohol intake. In the bar there was also a open mic night. A couple players and another NPC the party was friends with tried their luck and drew a ton of attention, but the real showstopper was Stan, who took the stage and dedicated his performance to Quintilius. He rolled terribly, and the entire tavern was throwing trash at him and booing. While everyone in the bar was distracted, Samuel sneaks up and rolls another 20 on his stealth roll to steal Charles. He throws the frog in his bag and sneaks back to the party's dorm room. Once most of the group leaves, Quintilius notices his missing frog. He instructs Salazar, a tiefling sorcerer, to get the frog back by any means necessary. Salazar grabs Brutus, a Goliath boxer NPC, as some extra muscle and brings him back to the dorm. They both arrive and try to shake down the party for the location of Charles. Meanwhile, Samuel and Stan were celebrating and discussing hiding spots for Charles up in Stan's room. Salazar eventually pieces together where they're at and heads upstairs. The entire party gets into a huge argument about giving it back, when all of a sudden Charles turns into a human. Absolute shock from everyone. Thievery had just become kidnapping, and Stan for once was absolutely right. Charles introduced himself as Charlton and answered the many questions the party had. Charlton was initially a student who ran the gambling rings for Quintilius for the boxing club on campus. He eventually got a bit greedy and started keeping a little extra here and there, and cheating their routine gamblers with less than favorable odds. Eventually, the high rollers put 2 and 2 together and came after Charlton. Quintilius, however, gave him another way out. Quintilius organized a fight involving Brutus and Charlton, and used illusion magic to make it seem like Charlton had died after a single punch. Once he was behind stage, Quintilius had him polymorphed so he could hide among the students. Brutus, knowing none of this, was revealed to be a big teddy bear. He had thought he accidentally killed this fellow student, and he refused to help in strong-arming the party. The party began to debate with what to do with Charlton. Most argued that they had to help him sneak off campus because he was in danger with the gamblers and Quintilius. Salazar however argued that everyone was in danger if they don't give Charlton back to Quintilius. The argument went on for almost 2 hours out of game, at which point I made everyone roll a perception check. All fails, and Charlton made an escape while they were bickering. The group searched after realizing he had left, but to no end. Charlton was gone. Sessions later, I had Charlton show up only to be killed off by the BBEG as a sign of the campaign getting more serious. All in all, the arc has become one of my favorites in this nearly year-long campaign. In the end, the lawful stupid Dragonborn really did call it with the smug aura. If you liked this story, and want to hear more of this crazy campaign, like how Stan now worships Captain Crunch, or I have literal Carl Weezer in my campaign, feel free to drop a like or join the party by hitting that subscribe button. Remember to turn on notifications. Until next time, I'm Crit, and I'll see you next session.